In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 tips to deprescribing or tapering off your psychotropic medication safely. In the last video, we talked about deprescribing as a whole and summarized what it is and what the process looks like. But in today's video, we're focusing on the tips so that you can be successful in the deprescribing process. So here we go. So my number 1 tip is have a support system. Now I emphasize this tip in the benzodiazepine video, or how to stop those benzodiazepines, and I'm emphasizing it again here because it is very important and often overlooked by many patients. It's very important that you have a support system because the deprescribing process can be very difficult, and oftentimes patients get stuck and then they want to give up. And so it's important to have loved ones by your side, friends that can support you, as well as a cooperating provider. And if you're not sure how to talk to your provider to get them on board to be a cooperating provider, I'm going to be making a video about how to communicate with your provider to get them on board. I also want you to know that there's a book and a resource for your provider if they're uncertain how this process would look like or how it would work. And that is the Maudsley Deprescribing Guide. So this book here goes over all of the details of deprescribing psychotropic medications, specifically the antidepressants, the benzodiazepines, the GABAergic drugs, and the Z drugs. So it's very important that if you have a provider who wants to help but is unsure, have them get this book. This will help talk them through the entire process. It also goes over a lot of the tips that we're covering today as well. It's also important with the support system that you get involved with some support groups, whether it's online or in person. Having a support system of individuals that are going through the same process as you is going to make this a lot easier, and again, help you to not give up when you start to feel stuck. Now, tip number 2 is all about those skills. And if you know me, you know that I talk about skills before pills. And when I'm talking about skills, I'm talking about looking for those root causes of your mental health symptoms and then learning coping strategies or lifestyle changes. Maybe it's modification to diet or activity to help treat those root causes and those underlying issues, because as you're coming off of the psychotropic medications and you haven't addressed those root causes, oftentimes those things will surface. And as they surface, they may become very difficult to manage. The deprescribing process itself is also very anxiety producing and can be stressful. So it's important to not only understand your root causes, which I talk about in my video on antidepressants and why they don't work. Once you understand your root causes, then you also want to understand how to develop skills to deal with emotional dysregulation, anxiety, and even stress. So this may be going to therapy and doing things like cognitive behavior therapy, or even mindfulness or mindfulness-based cognitive behavior therapy, as that has been shown to actually be very helpful for patients as they're deprescribing their medications. Also, breathing techniques to learn would be very important, especially those that help activate the vagus nerve. And vagus nerve activation in and of itself is also very useful with helping to reduce sympathetic activation and help reduce anxiety. And I'll be talking more specifically about vagus nerve activation in future videos, so make sure you're subscribed. I already made a video though on stress reduction techniques, and it covers a little bit about the vagus nerve. So if you'd like to watch that video, I'll make sure to link it down in the description. But understanding how to manage and regulate underlying symptoms, root causes, stress, and anxiety is going to be of utmost importance when you're coming off of your psychotropic medications. And so now that you've developed these skills and you're feeling very confident in leveraging those skills to help reduce your symptoms, we want to move on to tip number 3, which is knowing your risk of withdrawal. The reason why it's important to understand your risk is because based off of your risk, whether it's low, moderate, or high, is going to determine how to start your taper and how much you should start with tapering. Now, when you're understanding your risk, you want to look at several factors, and that's how long you've been taking the medication, the type of medication you've been on, whether it's low risk or high risk, the dosage of your medication, is it the minimal dose or the maximum dose or somewhere in between, and also your past experience. So have you had past experience with tapering off of medications, and what did that look like? Did you go through it very easily, or was it very difficult? And then based off of that, you'll get a score that'll tell you whether you're high risk, low risk, or moderate risk. Now, there's actually a paper, research paper that came out that talks about how to calculate your risk score. And this is specifically with antidepressants, but it can be modified to include the other medications as well. So I'll make sure to have the link to that paper down in the description. But also in the book on the Maudsley Deprescribing guides, they also go through the process on how to score and know your risk. So again, another good resource to have if you're considering tapering off your psychotropic medication, and I'll make sure to have that link in the description as well. And now, if you're uncertain of the risk, or maybe you're in between a score, or you're not sure, going slow is always going to be the safest option. So you could always start at the lowest percentage, like reducing by 1 or 2% of the medication, and go a lot slower, like 4 to 8 weeks. As far as tapering cadence or timing of the tapering goes, and then monitor that from there. And so that brings me to tip number 4, which is monitoring your withdrawal symptoms, because it's based off of your withdrawal symptoms how fast or slow you need to be going in your taper. So understanding your withdrawal symptoms is going to be paramount here, because your taper schedule will be adjusted accordingly. That's also another reason why it's important to have a cooperating provider with you, so they can be looking at things a little more objectively and understanding your withdrawal symptoms, and also they can better differentiate your withdrawal symptoms from perhaps side effects of other medications or even underlying conditions resurfacing. Now, once you understand your withdrawal symptoms, oftentimes people will get like a cluster of symptoms that are unique to them. So for instance, headaches, dizziness, shakiness, and brain zaps. So you'll put them in a cluster group, like these are my withdrawal symptoms. They're the primary ones, and others may come and go. But you look at your primary withdrawal symptoms, and then you say on a scale of 0 to 10, when I step down from 20 milligrams to 18 milligrams of this medication, my withdrawal symptoms on a scale of 0 to 10 were either say 0 to 4, which would be considered tolerable, 5 to 8, which would be considered moderately severe, and then 8 to 10 would be considered severe. Now, if they're moderately severe to severe, then that's a clue you should slow down the taper, maybe slow down by time, or even slow down by percentage of reduction. So based off of that, you and your provider can make that decision. If your symptoms were fairly tolerable, then it's a clue that you could actually go ahead with the cadence and the reduction on the next stage. And that brings us to my 5th and final tip, and that is be flexible. So as you're monitoring your symptoms and you're going through this process, it's important to not be so rigid and have a date set perhaps for your withdrawal, or say you're going every 2 weeks doing well, and then maybe you get stuck. You may have to go every 4 weeks. So that's okay. Or you're at every 4 weeks, and then you may get stuck or feel like your symptoms go up, and now you're going every 6 weeks. That's okay too. And so being flexible is very important, because even if you get stuck on a stage or you're stuck at a step, it's okay. Know that you have to honor your body, what your symptoms are, what they're telling you, and give yourself grace. Grace to hold, grace to stay, grace to slow down, and patience. So being flexible is going to be also one of the most important things that you need to understand when tapering off of psychotropic medications, because it's really not an exact science. It's more of an art. And so, do you have any experience with tapering off your medications and have other tips that you would like to share with us? go ahead and drop them down in the comment section below, because we learn from sharing each other's experiences. And as always, I thank you for watching. I wish you well on your mental health care journey, and I'll look forward to seeing you all next week.